Hello everyone, I am Shin Sang-hyuk, your host for today's In Focus. Global credit appraiser Fitch Ratings announced earlier this week that it has upgraded its rating outlook for Korea's sovereign debt to positive from stable. Boosted by the latest upgrade, experts expect Korea's ratings to reach AA- within a year from the current A+. This upgrade is all the more significant in that it came at a time when the entire world is still mired by the global economic difficulties. We will be discussing the situation in more details in today's In Focus with two experts, Dr. Song Won-gun from Korea Economic Research Institute and Mr. Kyung-Hoon from Samsung Economic Research Institute. I'd like to ask the first question to Dr. Song. As I mentioned very briefly already, the Fitch Ratings has upgraded Korea's credit outlook very recently. I think it is very meaningful. Could you elaborate more about the significance of this decision?
Okay, Fitch is one of the three major international credit rating agencies, and so it is a very significant move for the Korean economy. Fitch lowered Korea's outlook to negative just after the global financial crisis in 2008, but again back to stable in September 2009 right now, and it is back to positive, from stable to positive. Let's look at what that means. Sovereign credit rating indicates the risk level of the investing environment of some country, and it is used by investors are looking to invest in this country. And it takes political risk into account. But an outlook on credit rating, a sovereign credit rating, indicates the potential direction of a rating over the intermediate term, typically 6 months to 2 years.
So 6 months to up to 2 years.
2 years, yeah, right. So the outlook provides information to investors on the potential evolution of a rating. So positive means that a credit rating may be raised. So that means Korea's current rating is A+, and then it will reach, as expected, if Korea's sovereign credit rating is raised within next 6 or 12 months, it will reach at least a AA- level, which is the same rating as the one before the 1998 currency crisis.
I see. Yeah. So it's quite meaningful, I think. Well, Mr. Kim, could you explain more about the basis which the Fitch used for making the decision about Korea's credit outlook?
Yes, Fitch's decision to upgrade Korea's credit rating outlook was mainly as a result of Korea's strengthened sovereign credit fundamentals in terms of fiscal prudence. So experts believe that as Korea continues to strengthen its fiscal position, the actual credit rating will be upgraded within a year or so. And there are other reasons to support this view. More recently, Korea has expanded its capacity to absorb external shocks. For example, the proportion of short-term external debt has declined from 43% in late 2009 to 38% in June 2011.
From 43% to 38%,
yes.
I see.
And Korea has also secured expanded currency swaps with Japan and China in October, and this ramped up Korea's financial safety net measures after debt concerns in Europe and the US shook emerging markets in recent months. On top of this, Korea's foreign exchange reserves has expanded by 6.7% compared to a year ago to $311 billion.
I see.
And Fitch also mentioned that despite Korea's high dependence on the global economy, its firms, its corporations, have performed well thanks to their competitiveness and a flexible exchange rate system.
I see. They did use quite very important economic indexes, I think.
Yeah.
And by the way, as far as I know, Dr. Song, there are several other global credit appraisers such as S&P and Moody's. And they are, I'm very curious about how they rate Korea. And on the top of this question, one more question which I want to ask is that the relationship between the decisions made by these global credit appraisers. What I mean is that Fitch's decision on Korea's credit outlook this time can affect the ratings made by the other global credit appraisers?
I think so. It will affect other credit rating agencies' decision on Korea's outlook. And I think that it might be very strange if S&P and Moody's evaluate Korea's rating outlook differently.
Yes.
Okay. So credit rating agencies rarely make different assessments, especially in terms of the direction of the same government or company's credit rating. So credit rating agency, or like Fitch, has its own way of rating or evaluating and has its own policy. So it's very hard to say if Fitch's rating outlook would influence others' evaluation right away. But agencies regard each other's evaluation as an important factor when they score credit ratings.
So you mean that the S&P and Moody's can use different
different methods,
yes,
right.
and factors in evaluating, in rating a country's credit.
Yeah, but other credit agencies like method or results will affect their decisions, and then. But there might be time lags among agencies' rating release, but the direction of evaluation will be similar. So Moody's maintains Korea's credit rating at A1, which is the same rating as A+ at Fitch, and the rating by S&P is kept at A, single A. S&P will announce its ratings next month. I expect that Fitch's outlook on Korea's sovereign credit rating will have a positive impact on S&P's evaluation.
I see. Certainly, upgrade of the Korea's credit outlook is a positive signals to the Korean economy. And then certainly this will bring some changes to the Korean economy. What kind of changes we can expect to see after this decision?
Okay, obviously it's very positive. As the change in Korea's sovereign credit rating outlook leads to an expectation that the actual credit rating will be raised, the won is likely to strengthen in the medium to long term. And this means that for banks which issue their debt denominated in foreign currency, the cost of capital will be reduced with a CDS premium, credit default swap premium. And for Korean companies, their balance sheet is likely to be strengthened as the costs related to currency risks will significantly be reduced. And the loss that comes from exchanging currencies by foreign subsidiaries and the reserves necessary for lending in foreign currency could also come down. And in overall, this will lead to an improvement of local banks' credibility.
Yes, Dr. Song, and then how did other countries fare in terms of the credit ratings this year?
Okay. Since the outbreak of global financial crisis, the number of downgrades, 3 major credit rating agencies did on a sovereign credit rating is 59.
59?
Yeah, 59, and which is more than double the number of upgrades. Especially in European nations, 35 European nations' credit ratings were lowered, and other countries like Africa and Asia, 10 in Africa and 7 in Asia, nations' credit ratings were lowered. That means that European countries were hit hardest by global financial crisis. Let's look at the cases for this year. In the first half of this year, downgrades were concentrated in Africa because of the political turmoil in this region, including Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya, especially Libya. And Moody's lowered the credit ratings of Tunisia and Egypt in January, and Fitch and S&P will also lower the ratings of Libya and Egypt in February. And Moody's lowered the ratings of Egypt in March, and S&P followed by lowering the ratings of other African nations. In the first half of this year, downgrades were concentrated in African nations.
I see.
But in the second half of this year, the Eurozone nations were hit hard with downgrades of our credit ratings due to the sovereign debt crisis in Greece and other southern European nations. So 3 credit rating agencies lowered the sovereign credit rating of Greece in May and July. And Greece has experienced 10 times of credit rating downgrades in the
10 times?
Yeah, in the past 10 months.
Wow.
And Moody's and S&P lowered credit rating of Greece 9 levels each. 9 levels.
9 levels down.
And Fitch lowered the credit rating of Greece 7 levels down. And other European nations such as Italy and Spain also experienced the downgrades recently.
I see. Well, as Dr. Song explained, that certainly EU got the hardest hit from the financial crisis.
Yes.
So I want to ask Mr. Kim, could you update the situation happening in Europe?
Okay.
As far as I know, Italy, which is one of the major players in European economy, even Italy is facing serious difficulties. Could you do?
Okay. It's a complete nightmare in Europe at the moment. And let me begin with Greece. Fitch, Moody's, and S&P, as Dr. Song mentioned, once again all downgraded their credit ratings for Greece in July, and investors began to think that the Greek default may be near. As a consequence, Moody's downgraded French banks, which hold substantial amount of debt from peripheral European countries. And that was in September. And S&P downgraded Italy's sovereign credit rating, as it concluded that the current level of Italy's government debt is unsustainable. And as we entered November, investors had to learn to expect the unexpected. The outcome of the G20 Cannes meeting was very disappointing, and it failed to satisfy investors who expected some sort of global support for the Eurozone. Also, the Greek Prime Minister announced that his government will hold a referendum on the new debt deal and austerity measures. It was called off as the Parliament passed the agreement, but there was another shock when the Greek Prime Minister announced that he would resign. Yes. So the political turmoil in Greece has shaken international markets as investors fear the new bailout deal negotiated with European leaders in late October may not be implemented. Then it was Italy, finally, and Prime Minister Berlusconi's lack of credibility and his numerous personal scandals are behind the current turmoil in the financial markets.
Right.
And it has led to a rise in financial market vulnerability. His lack of leadership and trust has led to a failure in reaching a parliamentary majority in a key vote on next year's budget. And this increased the pressure on him to resign. And as financial markets drove up Italy's borrowing costs to record levels and raised further alarms about economic contagion in Europe. So let's look at Italy's current situation. The size of Italy's government's debt is currently 1.9 trillion euros.
1.9 trillion euros?
Trillion euros,
it's huge,
yes.
isn't it?
It's enormous. And the yield on 10-year Italian bonds is now above 6%. And a few days ago, it reached 7.2%.
Yes. Right.
And also with a very low economic growth, many believe that Italy will eventually have to ask for Eurozone's help, in which case it will be an enormous shock on the world economy. Yes.
I see. Well, there are two main pillars supporting global economy, Europe and USA.
Right.
But USA has been in trouble economically for the last several years. And very recently, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, they even forecasted that the USA would once again suffer credit rating downgrade before the end of this year. What do you think about this forecast?
In August, S&P lowered the credit rating of U.S. government debt from AAA to AA+. It was
surprise,
it was a surprise and it was a shock to the world economy. And this is the first time in history when U.S.'s credit rating is lowered from AAA because there are 15 or 16 AAA countries in the world. And since then, the credit rating of U.S. is lower than those of Germany, France, and Canada, and so on. So, this story started from the conflict in the U.S. politics due to the argument on raising a government debt ceiling. So U.S. politicians agreed on the point that U.S. needs to reduce the fiscal deficit greatly, but they didn't find a concession on how to reduce the deficit. Throughout this conflict, U.S. revealed its weak fiscal conditions and showed that it is very hard to compromise and solve the fiscal problem, especially politically. many experts and economists expect that the fiscal deficits and government debt of U.S. will increase drastically in the future. So if there is no action, but U.S. didn't show the political ability of drawing agreement between political parties or between administration and Congress for the reduction of fiscal deficit and government debt. That is the reason why S&P downgraded the credit rating of U.S. And right now they are arguing, and they have a special committee in the Congress for the reduction of fiscal deficits. But if there is no immediate or clear result, U.S. will face kind of another credit rating downgrade.
I see. So, Mr. Kim, maybe you have something to add up on the American economy.
Okay. The Federal Reserve has recently expressed cautious optimism about the U.S. economy, but warned of significant downside risks ahead. Recovery has strengthened since summer, but it forecasts that the U.S. economy will grow by mere 1.6 to 1.7% this year.
1.6 and up to 1.7%, yes.
It predicts that high unemployment rate will continue and record 9.1% this year and 8.5 to 8.7% next year. This is much higher than its previous forecast of 7.8%, and it proves that the stimulus packages have done little to improve the economy. And the political turmoil that Dr. Song mentioned is not helping the U.S. economy either. The Fed's statement today pickup in consumer spending also alluded to downside risks, including strains in global financial markets. And we know that it meant the Eurozone debt crisis. And the Fed also mentioned the possibility of taking further steps to stimulate the economy, such as buying more mortgage debt, but it did not come out with any detailed plans yet. Yeah.
So, as we discussed, the global economy does not show any signs of abating, recovering signs. And considering the Korean economic structure, which is heavily reliant on the outside Korean market, external factors, I want to discuss about Korean economy. What is the current Korean economic situation, Dr. Song?
Current Korean economic situation, or current Korean economy's performance, I think it is okay given the conditions of the external demand or global economy, because Korean economy is, as you mentioned, is heavily dependent upon external sector. So if the world economy is not in a good shape, it would have a negative impact on Korean economy. But current global economic turmoil comes from the debt crisis of the European nations and economic stagnation in the U.S. So, but the emerging economies like China or something like that is still in a good shape. So the export markets for Korean companies are diversified right now. So that means the portion of advanced nations as exports markets for Korea is reduced, but Korean exports are more dependent on the emerging markets. So for the Korean economy, global economic difficulties are due to the problems in the advanced nations are not as severe as the ones in the past, like global financial crisis in 2008. And the fiscal condition of Korean government is very sound and healthy. That's the strong point of the Korean economy. And other fundamentals in Korea are also relatively well. And as Mr. Kim already mentioned, the Korean financial markets are less vulnerable than those of the global financial crisis in 2008. That is the reason why S&P upgraded, not S&P, Fitch upgraded Korea's credit rating outlook. But however, global uncertainties, I think the global uncertainties might be an obstacle to economic growth of Korea. And then also the problem is that the increase in household debt would be a big problem in the future, because household debt in Korea is, much healthier and different when we compare it with the subprime mortgage crisis in U.S. and also the housing bubble in Japan in 1990s. So it might not become a systemic risk, but the speed of increase is too fast, and the increasing rate of household debt is very high. So we can't ignore these factors. So we need to watch carefully how it will evolve or something like that. And the amount of external debt that will mature next year is very large, and then we need to also watch very carefully how it will go.
I see. The many experts warns about the slowdown of the growth economic growth potentials in Korea on the middle long-term basis.
Yes.
What do you think about this forecast on the Korean the economy?
That view is based on the population structure of Korea. Low birth rates and aging population have led to a decline in the number of Korea's labor force from the second half of 2010. Also, as the old generation usually has a tendency to consume more, this could lead to a lower savings rate and affect the level of investment. Fiscal problems could appear in the medium term as welfare spendings rise with this social phenomenon of aging population, and a potential rise in government expenditure to foster Korea's future economic growth engines, and changes in South and North Korea's relations could also affect the fiscal position too in the future. Also, income inequality in Korea, income gap between permanent and temporary jobs, imbalance between exports and domestic demand, and climate changes have all been mentioned as medium to long-term risk factors that could affect, that could damage the Korea's potential economic growth.
I see. I will give you a last question to both of you because time is very limited. Actually, Korean economy has been well evaluated by the international, the credit, the evaluating agencies. Certainly, it is really good the signs to the Korean economy. But we have to make further efforts to keep the momentum in the economic the growth, I think. We already mentioned about it. But I would like to ask you to give a final words or any suggestions to the Korean government to keep the momentum in our economic growth.
Okay. I think in order for the Korean economy to keep its reputation, I think Korea needs to maintain its sound fiscal conditions and manage its risks, such as the household debt problem, very well. So, and the Korean economy is heavily dependent upon external sector.
Right.
That might be the problem. So, Korea needs to develop and expand its internal markets and internal demand. So, in order to do that, Korea needs to develop its service sector.
Service sector.
The productivity of the service sector needs to be raised because it's much lower than that of the advanced nations. So, for the service sector to develop, the regulation for the service sector should be eliminated, and the liberalization of the service market is needed because service sector's liberalization or openness that means that service companies will invest in Korea, and it will raise and it will contribute to raise the productivity of the Korean service sector. So something like a Korea-U.S. FTA will be very beneficial to the service sector in Korea because it will make many advanced knowledge-based service companies invest in Korea, which will contribute to develop the service industries in Korea. It's not only for the trade, but also for the internal markets, expansion, and growth. I think that is one of the key factors for the Korean economy to grow and keep the reputation, and that will help the credit rating agencies' evaluation on Korean economy.
Maybe in the near future, we will have a chance to discuss about Korea-US FTA.
Okay.
Well, anyway, Mr. Kim,
Yes.
what do you think about? I mean, what is your opinion?
In order to raise Korea's credibility, the government could manage the level of consumer debt because it's very high. It's fairly high at the moment, and sort out vulnerable banks, as we all know, and adopt appropriate property market policies. And for Korean companies, for the Korean government, raising the internal demand is very important. But for Korean companies, which heavily depend on exports, can continue to act as growth engines by expanding their presence in emerging markets and find new opportunities there. Yes.
Well, Dr. Song and Mr. Kim, many thanks for sharing your insights on today's topic. Well, today we have discussed the meaning, significance of the Korea's credit, the outlook upgrade, and certainly it is a really positive aspect of the Korean economy. But at the same time, we found it out that we have to make further efforts to find the solutions to the challenges we are facing, such as the increasing household debt problems and the uncertainties in the global market caused by the financial crisis in the world. And so we have to make further efforts to keep the momentum in the Korean economic growth. Well, this is all for today's In Focus, and I'm Shin Sang-hyuk, and see you next time.